Well, girl, I ask one question and then it's like all of a sudden it's just like the entire bag of shit falls out of his mouth and it's like, oh, there it is.
That's not true.
Is the thought of being imperfect keeping you from taking action? Welcome to Inspired Action for Imperfect Humans. Each week, we give you real-life stories and thought-provoking research that inspires your soul to live a more fulfilled life through your own actions. From the heart of Calgary, Canada, here are your hosts, award-winning coaches, Christopher Lawrence and Kyle Kalu.
Well, hello. Welcome back to another exciting podcast. I hope you guys have been liking the podcast we've been doing. And I think before we jump into it, we've been asking for your feedback. We've been asking just to let us know what resonates, what doesn't. Because sometimes when people have something bad to say, they usually have no problem saying it, but we just want to say, if you have something good to say, we want to hear about it as well. And are you sharing the podcast? Christopher and I go back and forth all the time sharing podcasts. We're like, did you listen to this? Oh, did you hear this? Are you guys doing that, or is that just us? I just want to know, like, what's your story?
If you don't want to share it, for the 3 listeners we have, if you don't want to share
not
it,
true.
Tell us why.
That's not true.
It might, but it might be a little bit true. Actually, it's funny because somebody actually messaged me and I can't even remember who it was on LinkedIn. And they said, I know you keep saying you have no listeners, but I actually listen. And I was
exactly.
Like, oh, thank you. Why can't I remember who it was? Oh, my brain is so foggy these days. Jeez.
A couple people have commented on that for us. And one
can we
person
talk
said,
about,
sorry, one person, and I just want this to stop. So for those who are listening, I want this to stop. We don't need any more feedback about, Christopher always attacking me and, all that stuff. We don't need that type of stuff. Us going back and forth, because a lot of people, sometimes they think, not a lot of people, someone has said, they asked if that was scripted. I said, no. All his attacks on me, folks, are genuine. Okay.
They are. Can we talk about why I'm mad at you today?
Oh, okay. Why are you mad at me today?
Because you abandoned me in my time of need.
What? Okay,
see, here's the thing.
Okay.
Yeah, totally. Well, okay, so here's the thing. Like folks know by now, we're business partners, but we're long-term, we've been friends for, I don't know, 14, 15, 16 years. And so we know each other's ins and outs, right? Like we can call each other out on things. We have a very good friendship.
Yeah, he knows too much. So those are the people you keep closer when they know too much.
Well, girl, I ask one question and then it's like all of a sudden it's just like the entire bag of shit falls out of his mouth and it's like, oh, there it is.
That's not true. That's not true. He pulls it out of me.
Yeah, I say hello and that's pulling it out of him. Okay, so I'm calling this podcast. Sorry, girl, this one is going to be hard for me. Oh, okay. Girl, I feel like laughing and crying at the same time.
That's usually what happens, yeah.
So I'm calling this one Panic Attack. Don't tell them what you do for a living.
Wow. Okay.
So I want to talk about a real life situation. So talk about imperfect inspired action. And there's lots of opportunity for this. So like vaccines are going around. Some people are vaccine people. Some people are not vaccine people. For me, it's like, hey, I it's not a scientific experiment. The research is very good on it. It's in the arms of millions and millions and millions of people. And the likelihood of having illness from the vaccine, like ongoing terrible side effects from the vaccine, are less than ongoing terrible side effects from COVID. That's my understanding. For our listeners that disagree, you are totally welcome to disagree. I think there's a lot about the human body we're still learning about and that we're still understanding. So,
true story. Yeah.
With that said, I did decide to go get vaccinated and I went to go get my second vaccine. And my husband was out of town.
Yeah.
And my best friend was out of town.
That's why I abandoned you. Okay.
That's why you abandoned me. And so it's like, big deal. It's just a needle. I'm not actually afraid of needles. That doesn't bug me. But I do have a little bit of like medical anxiety. And so anxiety is a growing thing in our society. Like numbers for those that are diagnosed with anxiety are really high, right? Okay. And certainly it went up during COVID.
Okay. Before we continue, can you talk a little bit about what is, for those who are kind of maybe not even sure, what is anxiety? Is it anxious moments? Is it uncertainty? Like, what would you?
So actually, I've got something up here that differentiates between an anxiety attack and a panic attack. So there's generalized anxiety, which is just this general feeling of anxiousness that people experience, as they go through their day. It can feel like somebody's sitting on your chest. A lot of it actually has to do with breathing, that people are breathing too shallow, and they're sending a message to their brain that it's like, hey, you should be freaked out right now, right? So it's like, so if we focus on breathing, it actually calms a lot of it down. Getting back into the body can help a lot too, into the physical body. Sometimes we try to fix it by like, it's like, well, count to 10 backwards. And it's like, actually what we should do is like progressive muscle relaxation or something. So an anxiety attack, this becomes really important for the story.
All right.
An anxiety attack involves apprehension, worry, distress, restlessness, and fear.
Okay. Wow.
A panic attack shares fear, but it moves into fear of dying or losing control, a sense of detachment from the world, so derealization or depersonalization. People experience this sometimes when they feel like they're dreaming, but you're awake. You ever had that experience where there's such an intense moment that you start to depersonalize, you start to detach, and it feels like you're up here, you're not. And then they both share like heart palpitations, chest pain, shortness of breath, tightness in the throat, like you're choking, dry mouth, sweating, chills or hot flashes, shaking, trembling, numbness or tingling, nausea. And of course, when you get these symptoms, you believe that something's actually wrong. So then it perpetuates. So then you become afraid of panic or afraid of anxiety.
And these things are happening at once, you're saying, is like there's a
they can, you can experience all of it at once. And often when you're in that attack state, so we're talking about anxiety attack and panic attack. There is a difference between the two.
Right.
So that's the difference.
Okay.
Have you ever had anything like that?
I've had periods of certain things, like the out of body one connects to me. There's moments where I'll trail off into what I thought was a daydream, but then I'm just aware that I'm just out of my body, so to speak. But it doesn't last long, right? And it hits me right away.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? And so some people go here faster than others. I don't think we really know why. I'm sure it has to do with neuroplasticity. I'm sure that people who experience ongoing anxiety can tap into anxiety faster in their brains.
Yeah. Just
like people who have ongoing chronic pain, the neural pathways to get to pain in the brain are shortened. So basically it means that you can get there much faster. Meaning people in chronic pain tend to continue to stay in chronic pain unless they actually take, the medication and everything else, but also a therapeutic approach.
Right. And I think when you just explain that between the panic and the anxiety side of it, I think, when I was dealing with my grandmother's death, there was moments where I just like, as the day got closer, I was feeling a lot of those things that I had to kind of process. Yeah. And you and I chatted a little bit.
About that would probably be anxiety, like a generalized anxiety, as opposed to an anxiety attack.
Right.
But you maybe experience some of this stuff.
For sure.
So,
So all right.
Not that this, just saying this on behalf of a friend, it has nothing to do with me at all. But this friend who was abandoned by his best friend. Oh my God. So I can laugh about it. You should know that. And I think if you're somebody who has anxious moments, anxiety or panic, find the humor in it because it will make it easier. Get to know your body. Reach out to me. I've created a panic and anxiety toolkit that can be really,
which is brilliant, by the way. I mean, I've used it on a couple of my clients. That was very helpful, and I actually told them where it came from. And I think that's a great way of when you experience something that you're trying to help yourself, but you're also helping others, which also helps you too, right? So that's like anyone who needs that definitely should reach out for it. It's a phenomenal kit.
Yeah. So I experienced this early in my 20s quite a bit, like some panic and some anxiety, and and it was a long journey, but I never gave up on working on it. So it's like, I can have little anxiety attacks that maybe last like 3 to 10 seconds sometimes. And I've had them in front of clients before, I've had them in meetings, but I know what to do with them. And usually when I'm done, I start laughing a little bit, like I giggle. It's like, oh yeah, remember to breathe, right? Because I know what's happening. And mostly it's just your body is out of control and it's lying to your brain and saying you're not safe. Right. And so the idea is to continually get yourself into a parasympathetic nervous state when you're not in panic and anxiety as often as possible. So lots and lots of self-care for people. And so maybe there's an inspired action there for people.
Yeah. And so what does that mean, Paris? Because before you get to that,
oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
You've experienced that in a while. So it was interesting.
It's been a while. Yes. So parasympathetic nervous system is the part of our nervous system that is in decompression mode. So it's like that's our resting states, our relaxation states. Some people wrongly think that when you sleep, you're automatically in parasympathetic nervous system, but actually there are people when they are high strung or high stressed, they stay in their sympathetic nervous system even while they sleep. So the idea is to actually take moments to replenish and relax and take yourself down a notch, right? The sympathetic nervous system is that kind of high energy, high state, stressful. So that's really good. That's good when you're playing sports. That's good when you're performing at work. That's good when you're performing on stage. That's good for, kind of staying alert, right? Out in the world. It's a really good thing to have. Most of our society, I think, and this is why I think anxiety is much higher than it used to be in our society. Most of our society actually lives in the sympathetic nervous system for too long throughout the day and ongoing. And they never actually dip into the parasympathetic nervous system long enough to actually have a replenish. So they burn out, they get sick, all this stuff happens. And so certainly, like COVID was hard on everybody. COVID has been hard on our business. COVID has been hard on our team. COVID's been hard on our families. I think, even harder, when you have deaths and stuff. And girl, we cannot talk about your grandma because I already cried about it this morning.
Oh, really? Yeah.
In front of a client. Yeah, I'm there right now.
All right.
I miss her, girl. So.
Don't get me.
Girl, I can see you.
Go on. Christopher has the good-looking cry. For those who know him, he has the good-looking cry. I have what I think people hear about, which is called the ugly cry, and it does not. So please, with the amount of makeup I have on right now, and just keep everything going,
girl. Oh, but you have such natural beauty. So anyway, it's been a hard year. There's other family stresses, and of course you can't go see people in hospitals, and even though things are opening up, the hospitals are still pretty restricted, and that kind of thing. So here I am by myself, and so I have a bit of medical anxiety, which means that it's just like sometimes when I'm in a medical situation, it has to do with a childhood trauma. Sometimes when I'm in a medical situation, I experience anxiety that's a little bit more heightened, and I just need to kind of work through it. And it's no big deal, right? Most medical practitioners are used to it. And so I go into Shoppers Drug Mart to get and I'm going to say the name because they were so kind, to get my shot. I get my shot and they say, wait your 15 minutes, right? To make sure you don't have a reaction. And I was going to wait my 15 minutes in the store, but I'm like, I'm going to distract myself because I know when I get an injection, they can take blood, I'm fine, right? But when I get an injection, I get a little bit weird about, I get weird about taking new pills and stuff. There's always a bit of anxiety. It's just like I don't want to react.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
And I just want to add this one little piece before I get vilified. I just want to add this one little piece that says normally we're with you, either myself or
usually.
We're usually with you.
Just depending on what it is, right? Like,
first time,
most of the time I'm good. If I take a new pill or something, like a painkiller or an allergy pill or something, I'm usually good, right? But when I get an injection, I always get a little bit weird, right? Like
and because of the injection, as the best friend I am, I said, hey, why don't we have someone with you? Hey, why don't we move the date? Hey, why don't we do something? Because I kind of
I don't want to wait for my vaccine. And if I
said I didn't want you to go alone.
No, I know that. And I wanted the vaccine. I wasn't going to wait because I'm like, I want this done. I want it over with. And I didn't want anyone else with me because if I got anxious, I would have felt embarrassed, which is a big thing with people who have panic and anxiety attacks. The embarrassment is a really big part of it. Embarrassment is just like, it's shame. That's the inner critic coming out.
Folks, just remember what he just said, okay? All right.
so
he didn't want anyone with him because he didn't want anyone
to get a water. I take 10 steps away from the room I got my vaccine in, and I start to have a panic attack. But of course, a panic attack in your mind is a very similar experience to anaphylaxis, meaning you're choking on your own tongue, you got a dry mouth, you're sweating, you got chills and sweats at the same time, shaking.
It's physical.
And it was so, I honestly, in all honesty, I haven't had one this bad probably for 20 years, right? I was just like, it kind of caught me off guard. And so within 30 seconds, I hit the floor because I was hyperventilating. So I fell to my knees. I start screaming for help in the middle of Shoppers Drug Mart.
Literally, folks.
Help me.
Could you imagine being a shopper?
Oh my God. Well, so the great thing is that I was surrounded by people. They got me to a chair. They gave me some water. I'm like shaking. I stayed for an extra half an hour just to calm down. But the best part of it was this woman who was standing there. I said, I don't think I'm having an allergic reaction. I think it's a panic attack. Like I managed to get some of these words out because I'm familiar with it, right? So getting to know panic and anxiety is a really good idea, right? Haven't really experienced anything like this. Don't take medication for it. Like, it's just, and there's no shame in medication. It's just, I don't need that in my life anymore. Girl, I could have used it that day. But this woman, talk about inspired action. I said, I think it's a panic attack. She was a customer waiting to get her shot. She says to me, take off that fucking mask. You can't breathe with that fucking thing on. Take it off. She says, my daughter gets panic attacks. She said, they're bad. She said, if this is panic, she says, you're doing a really good job. She says, we usually have to call the ambulance for my daughter to make, so that they can tell her. She said, we've spent so much money on it. Yeah. And so and then I started, she was good. She's like, I'm like, okay, I'm calming down. But then I start to freak out again. I start to get my head. And so my inspired action was, I said to her, while you're waiting for your shot, can you come and speak with me, please? I just needed to talk. That's one of the ways that I get out of my head. I need to talk about what's happening. I need to talk about other things. I don't like to be asked what's happening to me because then I focus on myself. I need to not focus on myself. I do progressive muscle relaxation. Once I was calm enough, I got into that. She goes, gets her shot. She waits 15 minutes and I waited her 15 minutes with her, more for me. So kind. So I think there's a whole bunch of inspired action here, which is like, if you experience anxiety, get to know it. Ask for help when you need it. Ask for help, even from a stranger. I was amazed, just like I was surrounded by like 5 people.
When did it come up where they asked you what you did for a living?
Oh yeah, I forgot the title of the podcast. So then she asked me, she's like, what do you do for a living? And in my head, I said, oh, for God's sake, don't tell her what you do for a living. She's going to be like, but aren't you supposed to have this all figured out? I said, actually, I run a life leadership and I own and run a life leadership and business coaching firm. And she's like, really? And I said, yeah, kind of ironic, right? And so it was just this moment of like, it's like, oh, hang on.
I'm glad you said something.
Tell her I'm an engineer or something.
I think that's another thing that holds people back when they're in these other moments of different things. Like even as a leader, when you make a mistake you haven't figured out and you have to tell someone that you're also a leader, right? Because sometimes that gets in the way and we don't always have it all figured out. And there's moments of life that jumps in, which is really what happened in that moment for you, right? And I'm kind of relieved that you allowed it to happen, because if you didn't and you were trying to subdue that or hold that back, and I could just think about what could have happened while you were driving home, what could have happened when you got home, what could have happened in other things, because
it would have been so much worse if I had actually run away and hidden.
I agree.
It would have
it's like
lasted
choking
for so
victims,
much longer.
right? And
Yeah.
first aid we learn, when you're choking, don't go away, right? And that's what people do, is they run to another place because they're embarrassed. They don't want people to see them choking. But we can't help you if you're not
if you
there.
hide. Yeah. So here's the thing. I had a little bit of embarrassment about it, but actually, the truth is that passed fairly quickly. Like I really believe, Kyle, that people who experience that, including myself, that was a human experience. I had a human experience, and there's nothing for me to be embarrassed about. There's nothing for people with anxiety to be embarrassed about at all. For nothing. It's like, yeah, but you literally yelled out loud in the middle of the store and people came over. Yes, because I was fucking scared with the information my brain had at that time and the way that my brain was able to process it. Yelling for help was probably the best thing I could have done.
Of course.
Right?
And
that's
what
a human
love
experience.
Someone was there.
And not just someone. I was surrounded by staff and customers, and it's like, and of course you do the thing, right? It's like, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, and people are like, stop apologizing. Yeah. And you know what? I did. Instead, I turned it into gratitude. Thank you so much.
Brilliant.
These moments are hard, but I'll move through it much faster. Right? Turn those apologies into gratitude. Girl, what a story. I've told it a couple times since, and every time I do, it makes me laugh because it's like I can see myself falling to my knees. Help me. It was scary in the moment. And I know for anxious people, anxiety is not a funny thing, but I promise you, if you start to see some of the humor in it, it'll make it lighter for you. It'll make you process it a little bit faster. You'll take yourself a little bit less seriously, and you'll just feel like, it's like, oh, what's happening? What are you freaking out about, Christopher? Nothing. And that's the scariest part of it. It's like, if you can have fun with it, it just gets a little bit easier. Yeah. So
what's the imperfect inspired action?
Yeah, well, I think the imperfect inspired action could be any number of things. Maybe the imperfect inspired action is just to relate, everybody just maybe relate to a little bit of self-compassion. Find that space in you to recognize that no matter where you are in your life, you're a leader, you're a star worker, maybe you're a really crappy worker and you know it, but you're having a human experience.
Yeah.
And nobody needs you to be perfect. Nobody does. And especially with those leaders out there, sometimes they feel like they have to hold stoicism, but actually your employees trust you more when you admit your mistakes.
Absolutely.
Kyle.
And for those helpers out there, thank you for being there and always finding an opportunity to help. And those people who sometimes don't know how to help, like Christopher talked about today, sometimes it's just having a conversation, just staying with that person and be present.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and letting them know that it's okay.
Yeah. Thank you guys for listening. We will see you again next week. And like always, let us know what is your perfect and inspired action that you want to take, especially listening from today. Take care.
It's our goal to build a global community of inspired action takers, and we can only do that with your help. So if you love inspired action, please leave a review on your favorite podcasting app and share us on your socials. You've heard from us. Now we want to hear from you. Go to inspiredactionpodcast.ca and tell us, what is the inspired action you took this week? Next week on Inspired Action for Imperfect Humans.
Following your dream is not as easy as it sounds. And I think that stands for most things. However, I would say it actually is downright hard.